My name is Christian Santiago, and this is Copyright Support. The Sith shall rise again asks, how can someone own a photo? I just copied it. Now that copy belongs to me. That's my photo. Well, Mr. Darkside, I just downloaded a Taylor Swift song, and now that song belongs to me. No, it doesn't. Owning a digital copy is not the same thing as owning a copyright any more than me owning a Pikachu doll grants me the ownership of Pokemon. If you buy a book, you own that physical book and nothing else. You can't modify it, you can't resell it, redistribute it, reprint it, repackage it without the express written consent of the proper copyright owner. Copyright exists to protect artists and encourage innovation. It gives artists exclusive rights to their own work for a predetermined amount of time. Without these protections, there would be a lot less incentives for artists to put themselves through that kind of pain and misery. Why would anyone pay for music, for books, for films, if there was no penalty for stealing it? It's already illegal, and people already do it. Monopoly sing-along asks, what about things I pay for? Do I own the movies or music I stream? No. Sorry to ruin your sing-along. When you pay $10 a month for Apple Music, you are paying for a personal use license. But you can't use it on your YouTube channel. You can't even burn a CD with it because Apple has DRM protection in place, so you can't even take it off of iTunes or Apple Music. The terms of service specifically prohibit you from any type of commercial gain from the music. That's why, for example, if you've ever noticed on Instagram Reels, if you've ever tried to convert one of your posts into an ad, suddenly all of those music options are no longer available, and that is because Meta does not have the proper permission to run ads with that music. You're going to have to pay for it, and oftentimes you're going to have to pay a lot for that privilege because it is assumed, and rightfully so, that those artistic assets are going to contribute to your financial gain and success, and therefore the original artist is entitled to their fair compensation. Marvel's Avengers, for example, when you pay your $20 to stream that movie, you can do it in your living room, on your phone, on your computer, on your laptop, at the gym, but you cannot do something stupid like slap their faces on a bar of soap and start selling that soap on Amazon. So don't get any ideas about projecting the film on a wall in your neighborhood, inviting the entire neighborhood, and charging them for any kind of access. Trust me, you are asking for trouble. Disney would be well within their legal rights to come after you, and let me tell you, they stand on business. If you wanted to expand that use, assuming Disney would even want to do business with you because they're very selective, it would cost you a lot of money. That is why, for example, a sports bar broadcasting a prized boxing match is going to pay a lot more for streaming that fight than you do at your house, because they're going to sell more drinks, they're going to charge a cover, and they're going to make a profit actively from that fight. And if you try to do something stupid, like this guy did, can you guess what's going to happen? Don't Tase Me Bro wants to know, what exactly is an image license? Well, in short, an image license is a legal agreement that allows somebody who isn't a copyright holder of a photo to use that photo under very specific terms. And there are many types of licenses that exist that include things such as exclusivity, the type of usage, advertising, how long you're going to use it for, etc., etc. Point is, without that license, you can't legally use that image unless it's in the public domain or qualifies under fair use. Rhiannon's Got a Gun asks, what is the public domain? The public domain is this happy, free-for-all world where art exists without copyright protection and is free for anyone to use, modify, redistribute, profit off of, and it's usually either because the copyright has expired, the artist might have voluntarily given up their rights altruistically out of kindness of their heart, or those works of art aren't entitled to copyright protection to begin with, such as things created by the government. So for example, those photos that NASA makes of the nebulas, those are automatically public domain. Shakespeare's plays have been in the public domain for centuries, which is why you see so many variations and adaptations. Honestly, more than we can count. How many times can you repurpose Shakespeare? And it turns out it's a lot, and I think we're all better for it. DJ Yellow Mellow asks, how much does licensing cost? Oh, Mr. Yellow Mellow, how long is a piece of string. There are many variables that go into pricing of a license for photography. Honestly, it's a little bit of art, a little bit of science. Some things to consider are the photographer's reputation. So Steve McCurry photos gonna be a lot more expensive than your typical coffee B-roll Instagrammer posting his bangers. Was it a once-in-a-lifetime sporting event or a volcanic eruption? Or is it a picture of a public building that anyone has access to? And then of course, things such as the intended usage. Are you going to advertise with it? How long do you need it for? Do you need it to be an exclusive license? What is the expected audience size? Is it gonna go on a billboard in Times Square in New York where millions of people can see it every day? Or is it for a local bakery who's gonna get like 100 visitors a month to their website? The bigger the use, the higher the costs. Wicked Messenger asks, if I'm paying for the production costs, the models, the location, hair, makeup, wardrobe, etc., shouldn't I own a share of the results? Don't shoot the messenger. In creative fields, under US copyright law, ownership is tied to authorship, not financing. By default, copyright belongs to the creator. That is the law. It is definitive, set in stone. There's no interpretation to go about. I understand if you feel a little bit resentful and bitter. I get it. Without the generous financing of many patrons of the arts, many wonderful, beautiful works would not exist. Vincent van Gogh would have just been another psychiatric patient if it wasn't for the generous donation of his brother financing his art. What your investment has secured is the production itself, but the resulting images belong to the photographer unless there is a work for hire agreement negotiated or a buyout later on down the road. But in return, those artists are usually very generously compensated. I mean, just check out how much Justin Bieber made for his masters. Which brings us to our next question from Jack's Broken Heart Photo. What is a work for hire agreement? Should I sign one? This is a legal contract that transfers the rights of ownership to your copyright from yourself to your client. In this situation, you are paid a one-time upfront fee. You no longer have any control of your assets. They belong to your client. This is how movie studios operate, for example, because unlike a still photo, which can be a sole creation, a movie is usually the result of dozens, if not hundreds, of people contributing creatively. Directors, editors, visual effects artists, costume people, set design, and if every freelancer retained the rights of their portion of the film, it would be legal chaos. So productions use work for hire contracts to ensure one entity, usually the studio, controls the final product. Now, there are exceptions to this, like when George Lucas negotiated merchandising rights for the Star Wars franchise. A similar option is a buyout, and really the only difference between a buyout and a work for hire agreement is that a buyout is something that is negotiated later on down the road, whereas work for hire is inherently imbued into the contract. You should also note that anything that you create as an employee of someone else, while you're on the clock, while you're using their resources, while you're using their time, belongs to them. This is why the patent for Gatorade belonged to the University of Florida for a very long time and not the individual scientists who created it. So, if you have $1 million idea, don't make it at work, don't use your employer's finances, fund it on your own time and your own dime. Should you sign one? Well, that question begs another. Are you okay with never being able to use these photos again? And how valuable are these photos going to be after the production is done? Consider what this means, signing it means. That means that you are going to need permission to even display these photos on your website for your own marketing purposes. They can be modified, distributed, or sold again without further consultation or contribution from you. You have no say where they're going to go, so make sure that you negotiate a number that you're happy with. Okay, future me here. I'm interrupting this lesson because as I'm editing this video, I realize I've neglected something really important. I'm trying to balance this video, trying to educate clients and photographers about copyright and licensing, but I also hope I can encourage anyone in the creative field to take a second or third look at how they value their work. I keep referring to our work as art, and in any other context it is. But in the context of business and licensing, I think it's better defined as a marketing asset. And marketing assets sell products, they boost engagement, they build trust with audiences, and they generate wealth for our clients. The more those assets are leveraged, the more wealth you're generating for someone else. So if someone spends $20,000 on photography, chances are they're going to spend at least $200,000 on a media buy. And by the way, that is considered a modest amount because it's not uncommon for them to go up into the millions. So don't let anyone cry poverty when a single ad in a national magazine can run 6 figures. I once had a client drink a few too many whiskey sours and confess to me that my photos end up on a website that generates $1 million a week. I won't be arrogant enough to presume that my photos contribute to all of that. But clearly, they believe that the quality of the photography has a direct influence on their audience, on their customers. That conversation changed everything for me and probably made me quite annoying and difficult to work with to those who want more than they're willing to pay for. So it doesn't matter if you think that your photos aren't that good or that you're not on that level. Take emotion and self-esteem out of the equation and leave room only for cold Vulcan logic. If your photos, if your work is on a billboard, on digital displays, on commercials, on product packaging, on Instagram ads, it means that they value it. They believe it's going to have a direct positive impact on the success of their campaigns. And if they're asking you for a copyright buyout, transfer, it means that they believe it's going to generate value for life. Money isn't everything. And I'm sensitive to the fact that there are so many variables and personal life circumstances that can influence your budget, how much you're going to charge, etc. So there's a time to consider all of that. I only insist that you value your work as much as your clients value theirs. And now back to the lesson. If I'm doing a work for hire, the cost usually multiplies by 10 or 15, and that's simply because of the opportunity costs and because I know that clients who need this are going to make a significant amount of money off of my creative assets. And I will not be able to renegotiate this later. So imagine a scenario where a graphic designer designs the logo for the next Nike while there's still a startup in someone's garage. And then 4 or 5 years later, that company is now worth billions of dollars. And that graphic designer signed a work for hire agreement and they initially did it for, $500. That is why licensing is so important, because it gives power to the artist to renegotiate the terms of usage if the value of those assets increases over time, which I would argue for a company like Nike, that Nike swoosh is priceless. In my line of work as an architectural photographer, I am often selling licenses to a building to everyone from the architect to the interior designer, the builders, the people designing the floors, the lighting, the landscaping. Everybody is gonna benefit from those images. And that is a ton of lost income that I'm gonna miss out on if I just give up my copyright. If you wanna own it, prepare to pay for it. Child of Chocolate asks, under what circumstances would I ask my photographer for a buyout? Oof. If you have to ask, you probably don't need one. And in fact, I would guarantee that almost nobody needs this. You've probably been misinformed by well-intentioned people, maybe some legal counsel that says the best way to avoid any future legal headaches is to own the copyright outright. And that is true. That is absolutely true. But what these people fail to tell you is that it comes at a considerable cost. And for most of you, it's overkill. For example, realtors might only need to use photos for like 6 months to post on the MLS. Why would they need to buy out an image? And if you are a clothing manufacturer or some kind of retailer, you're probably refreshing products several times a year. Products go through new designs, new models, new car models, etc. You're not going to be using these photos for more than a couple of years anyway, so it makes no sense for you to own the assets outright. You can just renegotiate with your photographer later if you decide like, hey, we actually want to use these a little longer. Now you might be thinking, well, I've got a lot of good reasons why I would need to own the assets. And I believe you. Maybe you just don't want your competitors to get a hold of those assets. Maybe there's some kind of trade secrets, or maybe you're a celebrity who values the messaging associated with their public image and you want to have control of those assets. All of that is completely understandable, but all of that can be negotiated separately. That's the great news. You don't need to pay for a buyout. Everything is negotiable. Just understand that the more usage that you ask for and the more that you restrict my rights as an artist, the higher the price is going to be. And if you can live with that, then you can pretty much have anything you want. The Angry Producer 403 asks, what kind of usage do I get by commissioning a photo shoot? Do I need to renegotiate this every single time? Many photographers will include some kind of boilerplate of standard licensing. In my example, I include what is known as collateral, which includes permission to use and distribute the images on non-advertising, brand-supporting materials such as organic social, your website, newsletters, stationery, things like that. Any type of paid advertising, any type of exclusivity, that's gonna come at a different price according to scope. Sergeant Pepper 62 asks, what is the difference between a copyright, a trademark, or a patent? Is it all the same? These are all different ways of doing the same thing, protecting intellectual property. They just cover different things. Copyright applies to anything that is artistic, so films, books, photographs, paintings, things like that. Patents cover functional designs and processes, so think of medical drugs or the technology behind the Lazy Boy recliner. And they last for 20 years after the patent has been filed. And then finally, you have trademarks, which include things like slogans, logos, words, pictures, anything that could kind of be associated with a company and a brand. So the Nike swoosh, Donald's arches, Mickey Mouse, and these things last forever. You just gotta renew them every 10 years, but you can have trademark protection pretty much for eternity. Shutter Ladybug asks, does copyright expire? Can it be extended? Well, Miss Ladybug, nothing lasts forever, not even the earth and sky, despite what Kansas will tell you, and that includes copyright protection. Works by an individual person will be protected for the life of the artist, plus an additional 70 years. If the work is created by an anonymous person or a corporation like Disney, you've got 95 years after publication or up to 120 years after the creation, whichever one is shorter. That is the current copyright law, but those laws have been updated many times throughout the years, so there is actually a distinction. Anything that was made before 1928 is actually in the public domain right now, because those laws, the current laws, do not retroactively protect anything that was created when the initial law, which is the Copyright Law of 1909, went into effect, which only protected things for 56 years. So The Great Gatsby, Winnie the Pooh, not the Disney version, those are all in the public domain. However, because of the way that US copyright law has evolved, mostly thanks to the efforts of our favorite animated mouse, works created after 1929 have the updated standard I mentioned before. One of those laws is actually called the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. It was passed in 1998, and it is the reason why works created by a corporation went from being protected for 75 years to the 95 years that it currently stands at. Clearly, Disney does not want their beloved characters falling into the hands of you degenerates. I wonder why. But they cannot protect their assets forever. The Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse, the OG version, actually entered the public domain last year in 2024. However, Disney does have other tricks up their sleeve to extend the protection of their characters. One of the things that they do is they regularly redesign these characters, and these new designs have a refresh of a timeline. So, for example, the Fantasia version of Mickey Mouse is protected until 2036. The Red Shorts 1950s version that many of us grew up on until I believe 2045, and the current design, if I'm not mistaken, is protected until 2070. And honestly, who knows what else Disney's going to lobby for to extend that protection, so it could be a lot longer. We'll see. But this vigilant tide of copyright protection lifts all boats, and all artists, including myself, including you, are going to benefit from it. This is why, for example, even though Sherlock Holmes entered the public domain, the original Sherlock Holmes novel, any future stories are still protected. So you have to be careful if you're going to use the character not to reference any stories that might still be protected under copyright law. And then there's the matter of trademark, which is a different form of protection. And as I said earlier, it does last forever. So even though Steamboat Willie is in the public domain, you cannot create or distribute anything that would reasonably confuse someone into thinking that it belongs to Disney, and you cannot use Mickey Mouse as your mascot for your own brand or business because the trademark protection has determined that Mickey Mouse is a vital, integral part of Disney's brand, and they don't want anyone confusing that. So what can you do with these assets in the public domain? Well, you can modify the design however you want. You can create original stories, original works of art. You can create your own merchandise and sell it, even redesigned. I mean, you can do some really intense graphic if you wanted to. But what you can't do is have anyone thinking that any of that stuff is associated with Disney or that it's a Disney sponsored or approved product. Capitalist Armada asks, why does copyright need to expire at all? Why should I have the right to distribute media I had no part in creating? This is an excellent question, and as a photographer myself, I empathize with it because, trust me, it's in my best interest to have the strongest, longest lasting copyright laws imaginable. I'm all for it. But that protection needs to be balanced with the public interest to repurpose art. The public domain allows for an innovation and evolution of a shared culture. It also prevents corporations from creating monopolies on that culture. Most creative works in history are inspired what came before them. Good artists often do steal. It's how mythologies evolve, and nobody has benefited more from the public domain than Disney themselves, because a lot of their original stories, such as Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or even The Lion King, have all been direct adaptations or loosely inspired by works that are in the public domain. If copyright never expired, we would live in a world where a handful of conglomerates would own every cultural touchstone that we value, and new artists, new voices would be completely shut out of the conversation, and we would never have anything new or original or anything to challenge the status quo. So I would argue that access to the public domain is as important to the curation of art as the protection that copyright offers the artists themselves. AlphaDog95 asks, do I need to register my images with the US Copyright Office? All right, photographers, this is for you. Pay attention, put down your phone, get off of Instagram, take some notes here. No, you don't have to do it, but you really should. Because yes, copyright protection is granted the second that you snap that shutter. But if you're ever in a situation where someone has stolen or infringed on your copyright, without that registration, you are going to be very limited in what you can do about it. Any type of lawsuit is going to be limited to what are known as actual damages, which are really hard to prove, and they're going to be based on your own personal history of selling art. So if you're like most people who doesn't have like any type of history of selling art, it's going to be really low, or they might just be like, well, you know, you only sell photos for $1,500, so that's what you're going to get. And you cannot recover your legal fees if your images are not registered. However, if you do the right thing and you register your images with the US Copyright Office, you are eligible for what are known as punitive damages. And the very non-legal way of describing it is that punitive damages are the judge's way of saying to the defendants, I think you acted with malice. I think you intentionally, willfully violated this photographer's copyright, and I'm going to make an example out of you, and I'm going to stick it to you. And you can make up to $150,000 per infringement, plus recover your legal fees. And if you don't believe me, ask Scott Hargis, who just won a whopping $6.3 million lawsuit last year for people that took his images and, you know, weren't smart enough to, how do I put this, to quit while they were ahead. Yamcha87 asks, can I copyright myself? Am I not a special work of art? Yamcha, I have no doubt that you are a special and unique snowflake, but no, you can't copyright yourself. But your likeness is protected by what are known as publicity rights, which prevent anyone from using your face, your voice, your likeness in any way commercially to profit off of without your express written consent. And the great news is that we all have this inherently. It's a God-given right in the United States. Additionally, some high-profile celebrities such as Michael Jordan or Taylor Swift own trademarks on their names. Even things like slogans or expressions can have trademarks. Pat Riley, yes, that Pat Riley has a trademark on the phrase three-peat. And if you don't know what that is a sports phrase for when a team in any sport wins a championship in 3 consecutive years, which means Mr. Riley is probably rooting for the Chiefs to win this Super Bowl. Editorial rights are protected, which is why the paparazzi have yet to claim the special place in hell that's reserved for them. So for example, a photo of J-Lo at the grocery store can be used for Us Weekly, but you cannot use it to promote your business in any way. Sorry. Publicity rights last for as long as you're alive, and sometime after your death. It really depends on the state in this matter. California, that would be 70 years. Florida, that would be 40. Celebrities that have been dead, or historical figures that have been dead for over 100 years, such as Abe Lincoln, that's fair game. They're in the public domain. Have at it. Have them fighting vampires or, whatever. Dragon Ball sniper ass. Hold on. You're telling me that the Pokemon tattoo I got is illegal? Can I be sued for my ink? Technically, yes. Tattooing copyrighted characters is an infringement. And listen, I'm guilty of that. Look, my arm is covered in Legend of Zelda tattoos. Nintendo might not like that. But it is rarely ever enforced because tattoos are not mass-produced, like posters, mugs, t-shirts, and it's much easier to go after one person doing 1,000 infringements than 1,000 individual artists doing 1 infringement each. It would be a different story if a tattoo shop was doing something like making a mass-produced temporary tattoo set that they were selling with a copyrighted character. That would probably not sit well. Or if they were violating any type of trademark by using these characters as part of their shop's branding, or like naming their shop like Nintendo Tattoo, that would definitely not fly. You're probably safe, but yes, technically, if somebody were petty enough or had an axe to grind, they could legally come after you. So yeah. Lady Aperture asks, is it illegal to take a photo of the Eiffel Tower at night? Mostly no, somewhat yes. The Eiffel Tower itself is not protected. Copyright for buildings in Europe expires after 70 years, but the light show that dazzles thousands of tourists and locals every night is considered a work of art, and it is owned and managed by the company that operates the Eiffel Tower. But copyright is only effective as your will to enforce it. It's really up to you what components of that copyright you want to enforce. In this particular case, I think everybody agrees it would be impractical, if not impossible, to police this. Like, you cannot have such a publicly displayed work of art in such a prominent tourist area and expect people not to photograph it. So you're not gonna get in trouble if you shoot the Eiffel Tower at night and put it on your social media and share it, but you're not allowed to profit off of it commercially. So you cannot sell prints, you cannot sell merchandise, t-shirts, mugs, and you cannot license it commercially to like a travel agent who wants pictures of Paris on their website without the permission of the Eiffel Tower's organization. Brooklyn Ronan asks, if I want to put a licensed image on my merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc., is there a specific license for that? Yes, this is usually known as a merchandising license or a product resale license. Most standard licenses, commercial licenses, are not going to cover this, so if that's your intent, get the right license. And it only makes sense because if you are doing this, you're going to be profiting as direct as you can be from works of art, and the only reason people are going to probably buy those mugs or those t-shirts is because you're using that specific piece of art. So expect the artist to want to be compensated accordingly. Selling the 305 asks, do I need to credit my photographer? Short answer, no, but why wouldn't you? Long answer, it depends. Many photographers do negotiate this in their contracts, and if you don't do it, yeah, you're gonna be in breach of contract. But legally, most of the time, no, you're not required to. However, it is considered a professional courtesy in most cases, certainly in any type of editorial use, you're gonna wanna do it. It's not standard in any type of commercial application, so you're never gonna see a photographer credited for an ad unless that photographer is part of the ad's reach. So for example, Annie Leibovitz or Brooklyn Beckham. Look, this is a cutthroat industry. It's hard to be a photographer, and every bit of publicity and visibility helps. And it costs you nothing. So there's no easier way to get on your photographer's bad side and no easier way to get on their good side. So if you're asking me, yeah, credit your photographer. I am Johnny Bravo's ego asks, wait, so I can't just use photos I find on Google? What you mean I gotta pay for it? Don't do this. Don't do this. This is like the easiest way to get sued. Next, Shorty by Nature asks, can I get sued for using copyright images even if I didn't know it was protected? Yes, and many people have. When in doubt, assume anything you find on the internet or that is handed to you belongs to somebody. Google's usage rights tool is a good starting point, but it's not a guaranteed. I wouldn't rely on it exclusively. So if you're ever in doubt and you want to use something, reach out to the artist and get their permission. And no, ignorance of the law is not an excuse here, any more than me pretending not to know that the Rolex I bought from that shady guy at the park was stolen. It is your responsibility to secure all rights for any kind of creative assets that you use in anything you release. And by the way, there are stock agencies such as Getty Images that use AI and other sophisticated algorithms that their whole business model is like scanning the internet for people who are infringing on copyright, finding those people and suing them. Without a paddle, 420 asked, can I legally reshare images that circulate on social media from my account? You can do so if you are using the built-in sharing tools in these apps, because these apps often will share the posts that features the original artist. We all sign up for that. Those terms dictate that we have the right to do that. So if you're an artist signing up for these platforms, that's what you're accepting. However, you cannot screenshot or download the images and create your own original post with it. And there are tools on Instagram to flag that kind of behavior. It could get your account banned, so don't do it. I am Cornholio 94 asks, do monkeys have copyright protection? Mr. Cornholio, that is an excellent question. They do not. And this question is referring to a rather funny case where a photographer named David Slater set up his camera in Indonesia to shoot some macaque monkeys. And these monkeys, they weren't being very cooperative. They were very anxious. And anytime he tried to get close to them, they would run off and scamper. And so he set up the camera in a way to encourage the monkeys to come and play with it. And the monkeys started actually triggering the shutter. And one of them got a very widely circulated selfie out of it. And then PETA decided that no, the monkey is the copyright owner, and they took it to court and they wanted to be the custodian of this monkey's copyright. And the court pretty much said that's stupid and shut it down. And no, animals cannot own copyright, only people can, so there's your answer. Failure to launch 903 asks, can you copyright AI images? No, you cannot. The US Copyright Office has determined that AI images are not eligible because they do not have human authorship. However, there are some ways that it's possible if the AI assets used, if they're part of a larger work of art that has an intensive amount of human authorship in it, so maybe like a photography composite. It's a lot of gray area and it is not guaranteed. Other countries have their own versions of this ruling, and honestly, this is an area that's evolving so fast because AI is evolving so fast. So check back in a couple of months because all of this might be outdated. Dreamweaver21 asks, what is fair use? Fair use allows for the usage of copyrighted material without permission, so long as it falls under certain conditions. Things like education, news, commentary would all be covered, but be very careful. There's a lot of gray area. If somebody challenges it, they're gonna ask a lot of questions such as how much of the work was used? Was the work that was used a key element of the final product? Does it impact the artist's ability to make a living off of his own work? Was it for commercial gain? Was it factual? Was it creative? Was it some kind of commentary? Slapping the Bass asks, what do I do if a big brand or celebrity steals my photo? I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. So my first piece of advice would be to get a lawyer. They're going to be able to advise you much better than I can. Beyond that, what you should do is definitely document the infringing actions, whether taking screenshots, taking photos. Just make sure you have something that you can refer to. And obviously you should have preemptively registered your images with the US Copyright Office, because if you have to sue, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Where you go from here, totally depends on your stomach for a fight and your level of pettiness. Some artists with massive followings have successfully shamed big brands and artists with a hailstorm of negative press. Most of us don't have that kind of social bandwidth, but it might be cathartic and it might feel good in the moment. You can file a DMCA takedown with Google. You can use tools from Meta, from YouTube to issue copyright strikes and have the content removed. You can send a cease and desist letter along with a demand for payment to the brand directly. And you can negotiate a prorated rate for the usage that's already been incurred. And if the brand decides like, hey, you know, we're sorry, but we do like the image, we want to keep using it, you can negotiate a fee going further. And of course, if they ignore you, get a lawyer. If you've filed your proper registration with the US Copyright Office, then you're gonna laugh all the way to the bank. It's totally up to you. Just keep in mind that court is messy, like legal fees are expensive, and it takes a lot of time. The legal process, there's a reason why it's known as like, what is it? Deny, defend, delay, whatever it is, because it's a long, drawn out process, so you really have to have the stomach for it. It's totally up to you. Just remember that copyright is only as effective as your will to enforce it, and if we don't fight for it, it means nothing. The existential photographer asks, is licensing dead? Are we damned to a future where we'll be expected to give away all of our rights with no added cost upon being booked? Will this be the new normal? This is quite the gloomy picture, huh? No, US copyright law isn't changing anytime soon, so laws will remain in place to protect creators. However, I gotta tell you, it's up to us as individuals to enforce these rights. It's why Disney goes after even the mildest of infringements. Like flexibility, copyright is something that you either use or you lose. I had a recent conversation with a well-known architectural photographer whose reputation far exceeds my own. And he told me that he researched 50 of the top most popular architectural photographers in the world and noticed that only 3 of them have ever registered an image with the US Copyright Office. That is not good. That sucks. It's compromising the foundation of why we're able to make a living doing what we love. And it's doing it at a time when it's already so hard to be in this profession, with the floor to entry getting easier and easier as technology advances, AI looming in the background, who knows what that's gonna do. And you know, it kind of feels sometimes like rates and budgets are just shrinking, and it's a losing uphill battle. And I'm sorry to say it, but photographers are notorious for wanting to be chosen, validated, booked above anything else, and they will slit each other's throats to get booked. I have seen it. We furiously undercut each other on our rates, and we're reluctant to defend our copyright out of some kind of fear of rocking the boat and being perceived as difficult to work with. As this same photographer put it, I have never seen a group hate themselves as much as photographers do. If we don't collectively enforce our copyright, we're setting ourselves up for a future where we're just gonna hear clients say, oh, but the other guy, he doesn't charge me for any of that copyright or usage stuff. Why are you doing it? A lot of them already do. We've let society convince us that art has no value, that it shouldn't be funded in schools, that we should all go out and get real jobs. And yet those same people spend all of their free time playing video games, streaming movies, TV shows, binge watching them, reading books, looking at paintings, going to museums, appreciating art. They want to convince us that it has no value, but they can't seem to live without it.